Tamer back with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time we've got Season 5, Episode 13, which is called The Hostage. This one starts off with a Latin American vibe and music again, where a couple of dudes spot Paris, who has gone undercover in a foreign country, as a hotel magnate named Walter Phelan, coming out of the U.S. consulate. They get behind his cab, and it turns out his driver is in cahoots with them, flooding the back with anesthetic gas, allowing the two men to get Paris into their van. The man radios the police and identifies himself as rebel PRF man Robert Siomny, demanding the release of 3 of his men from prison, else Walter Phelan dies. So Paris, as Phelan, is brought back to the PRF compound, where co-leader Jorge Cabal tells the other man, Federico, to treat Paris well. On the way into his prison cell, Paris grabs some berries from a nearby bush and chomps them down. Jim tells the rest of the IMF that they have no leads at this point, but Paris is smart enough to make something happen. He also tells them their deal with the country's government involves them delivering Siomny to them. As Siomny and Cabal watch the news, Federico tells them that Paris appears to be dying. Siomny, who's had some medical training, checks him out and gives him an injection of something. Paris starts laughing and says that he has Hodgkin's disease and will die without medicine to control it, denying them their hostage. When the IMF hears the news, Doug surmises that Paris must have given himself a fever with something to simulate the symptoms, and they had discussed Hodgkin's some time ago. Doug prepares a small bottle of vitamin B that looks and feels like vinblastine, which Paris needs if he actually had the disease, and Barney puts a transmitter in the cap. A message is sent to Siomny to set up a meeting, but he avoids that trap by demanding that the medicine be paradropped, which Barney and Doug accomplish at Siomny's designated point, and the transmitter allows the IMF to find the location of the PRF compound, which Jim relays to a USAF plane for reconnaissance, the Air Force. Jim takes over temporarily as a prison commandant, and the 3 prisoners are brought to a holding room, one of whom is Cabal's son, Luis. Jim says that the 3 men will be executed sequentially in the morning unless Paris, as Phelan, is released. Jorge Cabal is visibly shaken, and his men think that keeping Paris isn't worth the life of his son, but Siomny is sure they're bluffing. Paris is told about the decision, and Siomny offers him the chance to send a message back to try and stave off the showdown, allowing Paris to send a message in code to the IMF with information about the compound. Dana shows up at the prison as Luis's girlfriend Anita, and is given Luis's car to go to the compound. The first man is brought out whimpering to face the firing squad in the morning with the rebels watching on TV. He's quietly replaced with a dummy while being brought in, and the dummy is executed. The second man gets a similar execution as Doug sets Barney down near the compound to infiltrate it as one of the rebels. He climbs onto an incoming truck to get in, with Dana not far behind. When Dana arrives, Siomny denies her access to Cabal, throwing her in the cell next to Paris. Cabal gets upset, but Siomny tells him it's an obvious ploy. Luis would never tell anyone where the compound is, but Cabal talks to Dana anyway. He ignores her pleas to release Paris, but tells Siomny to get her out of the cell. Doug calls Siomny as a government official from the U.S. for a final attempt at a deal, but it goes nowhere. Siomny quietly tells Federico to kill Dana so that she doesn't try to influence Cabal further. Jim also makes a plea over the TV airwaves, and Cabal visits Dana in the church as she prays, telling her that their cause is more important than one person. After he leaves, Federico comes to the church with a switchblade, but Barney knocks him out and prepares a quick mask of him. The time comes for Luis's execution as Barney puts Federico in their car and takes his place. Siomny wants to turn the TV off, but Jorge wants it on, and Siomny tells Federico to kill Paris, as they have no use for him. Barney heads over and frees Paris, as Federico, giving him a curare compound to make him appear dead. Luis shrugs off the mask, making his father a bit proud that his son is, facing death with bravery. At the last second, Doug appears and says he'll give Cabal 15 more minutes to change his mind about Walter Phelan, as a shot is heard at the compound and Paris is found dead. Cabal is inconsolable as he realizes what's been done, and radios Doug about what's happened, claiming that Phelan was shot trying to escape. Jim replies that the government will accept Siomny and Federico in Phelan's place, allowing Luis to live, but he'll have to finish his jail term, which Siomny laughs off as a joke, but Cabal indicates that they have a deal, and Siomny and Federico suddenly have guns pointed at their backs quickly. Dana thanks Cabal and heads out behind the transport truck, meeting up with the IMF at the agreed place. Doug revives Paris, Federico is brought out of Dana's trunk, and Barney unmasks, revealing to Siomny the full extent of the IMF deception as he's carted away. Mission accomplished. Unofficially, I guess. I'm going to give this episode a grade of a D+. I had given it a different grade before, but after going through my what you'll hear in my discussion, I decided to regrade it. Let me start with the good. Louis Antonio as Robert Siomny. He is a very, very interesting kind of villain. He, along with Joe DeSantis as Jorge Cabal, they're decent antagonists, certainly good guest stars, but especially that character of Siomny. It's really interesting. Obviously, he's a very, very intelligent guy. He's not a schmuck. It takes a decent level of work to fool him, using Jorge Cabal as the weak link in a sense. But, his lameness kind of comes through. The IMF is able to use his conceit against him. But I was very impressed that, he was always kind of on guard, always realized, hey, wait a minute, they're trying to play us. So the intelligence that the character shows is very, very refreshing. I also kind of liked the way that the IMF kind of laid out the plan, saying, we'll just have to keep putting it at Jorge Cabal because he is that weak link, and then finally he's had enough when he feels that he's got nothing else to lose. I also do like that and I usually don't like this, I've mentioned this many times before, the burn at the end is very, very well deserved, where Siomny basically is shown right in front of his face how badly he has been deceived. With Jim just kind of looking at him, Paris standing up, very, very much alive, Federico turning out to be Barney with the real Federico in Dana's trunk. That was really, really, really good. He definitely deserved that what was coming, because his character is just that type of rebel that just wants to fight. He played with fire, and he got burned. I want to move on to a bit of kind of a point counterpoint before I get into some of the not good, because it will kind of blend into that. I looked at this episode and I said to myself, this is a very unique type of separate and mislead plot, which is rather common and will get more common in the final seasons of Mission Impossible. And I was saying to myself, you know what? I really should like the fact that it is such a unique kind of plot. In terms of the way separate and mislead is, just by the very nature of, the terms, you have two antagonists with, differing goals and differing motivations. And the IMF finds a way to, break them apart, generally physically, so that they can't interact with each other. That doesn't happen here. In this case, the two antagonists are basically with each other the whole time. And that is, I really wish that they could have done more with that. I also like that the IMF in this case, they don't get to control the environment, which I've mentioned in other episodes is actually a really, really good thing, where, it ordinarily would mean that the IMF is going up against an enemy who is their equal. Equal may not be the right word, but at least has competence. And in this case, the IMF, interestingly, find a way to gain control of the battlefield, so to speak. And that should really be a positive thing. And that's why I'm saying to myself, so why is it that this episode just kind of doesn't come together for me. And why is there so much wasted potential here when the idea of this plot should actually turn out to be really, really good? I had to think about it quite a bit, and it certainly helped me to go through the recap as I just did. And as I was doing it, I stopped a couple of times, you probably noted that, to make some notes, and I said, okay, yeah, these are some reasons why I don't think it really kind of comes together and knits together well. The first thing I noticed is the IMF is reacting rather than acting. That is something which is very, very unusual, and again, it just doesn't kind of fit the MO of MI, if you will, the modus operandi, the way that the IMF is supposed to work on this show, is not that they are supposed to react to what their antagonists are doing. They're supposed to be driving the action. Now, generally speaking, as I mentioned, that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I pointed it out earlier this season in the episode My Friend, My Enemy, and I pointed out in that episode that really brought the episode grade down because, it just seemed very, very disjointed. I'm sure that there have been other episodes where the antagonists have driven the action. Season 3, This Mind of Stefan Miklos comes to mind. And Operation Rogosh, heck, in season 1, the antagonist, drives the action and kind of drives the plot forward. But the IMF is like, okay, we're going to let him do his thing, but we've got control of the environment. And in that case, the plot kind of does come together in a very positive way. Here, I just feel like it really doesn't. I would be very, very hard-pressed, I think, to find anybody who would argue that the way the plot comes together here is really positive. I really just don't see that. Moving on to other things that are not good, specifically when it comes to the plot. The real big thing here is the fact that there are so many plot contrivances. And when I went through the recap and I looked at them all kind of one by one as they were laid out, I was just like, whoa, how, boy, there's a lot to overcome here. I read from the Mission Impossible dossier a couple of things about this episode, which make a lot of sense. First of all, I noted right away the whole thing about Paris eating those berries in the beginning and giving himself a fever and then saying, oh, well, I have Hodgkin's disease. Look, I've had a little bit of medical training. I wouldn't have come up with that, right? Like where would you get that just kind of out of nowhere? And so they developed the story that Paris and Doug had a conversation about it for some bizarre reason. I'm trying to think of any circumstances why two IMF members, one of them is a doctor, Doug is a doctor, of course. Why would they have a conversation about that? It just doesn't make sense. Then I read in the dossier that the original plan was for Doug to be the hostage. And that would actually make sense because he as a doctor would know what the symptoms of Hodgkin's are and all of that kind of stuff. And at least that would have been somewhat more believable. Then, creatively it was changed to make Paris, that character. I guess because, Leonard Nimoy is kind of, more, higher up in the food chain as far as the actors go, whatever. But it really, really, really strains credibility that, we're starting off this episode on that foot where it's like, oh, okay, you're going to pull something like that out and try and make us believe that, just based on an offhand conversation that Doug and Paris had, that's going to, start the whole ball of wax going. Okay. Also not good. The way that the plot kind of goes forward is very repetitive and borderline dumb. The hour is stretched out so badly, and at first I don't know how I missed it, but again, as I read the recap, it just crystallized and came together for me. There's so many delaying tactics, silly delaying tactics that the IMF uses through this episode. They do this whole, let's spread out the executions. We're going to do the first guy at 6 o'clock, and then this guy at 9 o'clock, and Luis Cabal last at noon. Why? What is the point of that, other than to just fill the hour by having one guy, and okay, that'll fill a minute and a half of television, and then we'll do the second guy, and that's another minute and a half. That's just brutally obvious to me. Also, there's some major plot holes here as well. I'll just kind of go through the whole thing. Why in the world does Robert Siamni let Paris, as Walter Phelan, send a message after he receives the message from the government about their demands? He says, send them a message, tell them you've been well treated, tell them tell them that everything is okay. And he allows Paris to send a personal message, which allows him to convey information to the IMF. What was the point of that? What in the world was Robert Siamni hoping to accomplish with that? The only way that would make any kind of sense is if Paris's message contained some sort of counter offer or counter threat, or counter demand, if you want to call it that. It just absolutely made no sense, and it was completely contrived. Blink and you miss it, but this time I looked and I said there was something that bothered me about that right from the get-go, and then thinking back on it and doing the recap, then I realized that that's exactly what it is. Following up from what I said previously about time wasting, the whole bunch of empty threats from the IMF, oh my gosh, that just became ridiculous. This is your last chance. I'm telling you, this is your last chance. Jorge Cabal, this is your last chance to save your son's life. Hey, Jorge, you want to save your son's life? Here's what you need to do. Oh my gosh. Like, what are you people doing? Oh gosh. I just don't understand. Once they had the plan set in terms of what they were going to do, which is to get, have Dana go in there, have Barney infiltrate the place, it seems brutally obvious to me that the only way that the plan was going to work is for time to run out, and to the point where Siamni, tells his man Federico, who he obviously doesn't know his Barney at this point, go kill Paris. We have no more use for him. What would they have done? Like, it would have basically ruined the episode. Can you imagine if Siamni had said, "Oh, okay, you know what? We give up now. Here's your guy. Let's meet and let's do an exchange." And I can just imagine Jim and Doug looking at each other. It's like, oh, gee, we weren't prepared for that. It would just be ridiculous. Once they had that plan in place and they knew that, okay, this is kind of how it's going to go. We just have to kind of wait for time to run out and then, fool them into thinking that, they've lost their last chance. There's no reason for the IMF to keep offering anything. It's just ridiculously lame for Doug to kind of come in at the end and say, you got 15 more minutes, and we're really, really, really serious this time. Oh, come on. I mean, if you were to do, for the parents out there, if you were to do that with your kids, you would have zero credibility, before long, once they get past the age of 4 or 5. And in this case, it's really just more wasted time to fill the hour. And it's really, really blatant when you think about it. I was going to point out, and I do think that this does bear some... It does bear mentioning in terms of something that is not good. I did mention that Robert Siamni, played by Lou Antonio, very, very prolific actor. Still with us, actually, I checked. He's almost to the age of 90 now, but still with us. And his portrayal of Siamni here, very, very intelligent guy, uber conceited. Which is what the IMF plays on in this case. I believe that the problem with the Siamni character, it's not as major and it's not as problematic as the plot contrivances, but I believe that the Siamni character just has a level of heat and hate generation that you just kind of want him to go away. It's like, you just say to yourself very quickly, boy, I've really had enough of this guy, and the rebel without a cause thing that he does is very, very over the top. It's pointed out that, he's the kind of guy, he just wants a fight. He doesn't want to win. He's not an old school rebel. I think Kim says that, like Jorge Cabal, where, he actually wants to, accomplish something. Siamni just wants to cause mayhem. And that a character like that, you don't necessarily hate him just for that, but hey, it does make it a lot easier. And he's one of those characters that you just kind of want him to go away. Not even so much as get his comeuppance, although, it's a little bit of both. I guess it depends on how you look at it. But it's really the plot contrivances, I feel, that bring the grade down on this one. Final note, this is kind of going into the second half of Season 5. And I also read from the Mission Impossible dossier that by this point, Leonard Nimoy had kind of mentally checked out. I can sort of see why. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but the next bunch of episodes through the rest of Season 5, you're not going to find a whole lot of home runs, okay? You're not going to find a whole lot of great ones. There are some decent ones, but there are some others that are going to be kind of, very, very middle of the road. So I can see why it was that way for Leonard Nimoy at this point. We had a good one previously in Squeeze Play, but the rest of them, there are some bright spots, and we will get to those. But just thought I'd point that out. And I think that's about it. Thank you, as always, for watching. Please like this episode review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and please leave your comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this one. Again, I feel that this Siamni character is one that, could get people really, really kind of riled up, but I just feel that there's that level where it's just like, you know what, I just really just don't care that much about this guy to get riled up. Love to hear what you have to say about that. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.